I will hit the go live here in a minute, and if you will count back from 10.
I would like to welcome everyone to the Madison Fire District regular session virtual meeting, February 17th, 2021 at 7 p.m. Roll call, please.
Mr. Adams.
Here.
Mr. Anderson.
Here.
Mr. Gontner.
Here.
Mr. Lee.
Here.
Mr. Vest.
Here.
Mr. Wayman.
Here.
Okay, thank you. Would everyone please join me in a moment of silence to remember family, friends, and neighbors and members of the military and safety forces who are no longer with us? Would you please join me? Thank you. May I have a motion for the approval of the minutes for January 20th, 2021, the reorganizational meeting, and January 20th, 2021 regular session? Is there a motion?
You have that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Is there a second?
You have a second.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Adams.
Abstain.
Mr. Anderson.
Yeah.
Mr. Gontner.
Yes.
Mr. Lee.
Yes.
Mr. Vest.
Yes.
Mr. Wayman.
Yes.
Okay, may I have a motion for the approval of the bills and the payroll for January 2021? Bills at $98,323.12. Payroll, $119,839.09 for a total of $218,162.21. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the bills and the payroll at this time.
Is there a second?
There's second, Mr. Adams.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
Mr. Gontner.
Yes.
Mr. Lee.
Yes.
Mr. Vest.
Yes.
Mr. Wayman.
Yes.
Mr. Adams.
Yes. Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
did we approve the minutes of the regular session from January 20th?
Yes, I read that. I read the organization 120 of 21 and the
Both
regular.
at the same time?
Yes.
Sorry.
No problem, sir. Okay, we move into our January 2021 financial report. Joanne?
Okay, I'm reading from the fund summary report for January 2021. We started the year with $4,224,689.06. Our month to date and year to date is the same as $67,807.65. Again, our month to date and year to date expenditures is $218,162.21. So we started February with $4,074,334.44. A note to keep in mind when we were talking about the expenditures, remember January had the big payout for the HSA at the beginning of the month and the BWC year payout.
Any questions for Mrs. Clapp?
Okay. Then Mr. Anderson, so you know, I want to let the board know that we received our $500,000 of our property tax advance today.
Okay.
And then you'll see later on down here in the meeting, I have a resolution that I was asking for you to pass so that we would opt in to the suggestion that the town or the auditors suggest in reference to more transparency, to ensure that I am, performing my duties all the time on time, so it'll notify you otherwise on there. And then the auditors contacted me and said they're looking at maybe starting the end of this month, beginning of next month, our audit. And then one other thing I suggested to the chief when we go forward doing the bathroom renovation, that we do a transfer out and, for unappropriated funds and put it into the capital so we can keep a better track of all those capital expenditures on there. I don't know how the board feels, but that's what I recommended. That'd be easier to do.
All right. Is there any further questions for Mrs. Clapp? Anyone? Okay. Chief, anybody from the public portion?
Give me one moment, sir. One moment, I'm sorry. I've got too many screens. No, we've not had any questions at this point, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Okay, we'll move on to legal counsel. Mrs. Dane?
Yes, I just wanted everybody to know that I had a chance to review the contract that was proposed by ICT Consultants. I believe that was circulated to everybody. Don't have any huge issues. Just wanted to point out a couple of things to the board and before your consideration of that this evening. There is no actual time frame outlined in the agreement, even though CT references a 5-month construction period. I know we set a schedule and we'll continue to do that. But basically, they're going to perform their services within a reasonable time. So unless the board has a problem with that, I mean, I think that that's reasonable and they should be able to work with us within our schedule. It does go through how they're going to invoice us when our payments are due. They are indicating that obviously their estimate of a construction cost is going to be just that, an estimate, because they can't control the actual cost of construction. They're going to perform their duties within a reasonable standard of care, which would be among their professional responsibilities. They are not going to be in charge of really supervising the construction. They're going to be making sure that the phases of the construction are proceeding forward, that the documents are in place. So I just like to point that out to everybody. The one issue I did have was on page 3 of the contract and the terms and conditions regarding insurance. I know that after that, I did follow up with Mr. Gauntner, and he followed up with William Gallagher at CT Consultants. And my question was, under the statute, specifically 153.70, we have to require that they carry professional liability insurance. I really didn't have an issue with CT having that coverage available to them, given the size of their company. But it was interesting to me that in their contract that they only listed as insurance, workers' comp, employer liability insurance, general liability insurance, and automobile liability. So I just asked that it be amended to also reflect that professional liability coverage maintains intact while the project is ongoing. My understanding is they don't have an issue with that. Obviously, termination, they can terminate for cause, we can terminate for cause. They can terminate if there's a lengthened delay of over 90 days for reasons beyond their control, and we can terminate based on convenience. The only other thing I saw in here was hazardous environmental conditions. The only thing I point out to the board is it does have an indemnification provision that would make us responsible for any and all costs, losses, damages, basically sickness, injury caused by any environmental hazards that they encounter while performing their work. So other than that, it's pretty standard, but I just wanted to make the board aware, in case you didn't have a chance to review it, that that's what the contract provides.
Any questions for Mrs. Dame?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have a simple question, maybe not so simple, but a question at that. Ms. Dane, what I'm looking at and what I've read and what you've read to me, they have no controls on the costs and overruns. And isn't it normal within a contractual agreement for construction that you would have some sort of a percentile that they have a ceiling to, as opposed to this unlimited?
That will be laid out in the construction documents themselves, and that will be our contract with the actual contractor who's performing the work. That's where you really see the overages, or you see like change orders and the procedure for that, where it'd have to get approval over a certain amount. This is really just a contract for the architectural and designing services. They are indicating that their work is going to be performed at an hourly rate, which is a 3.2 multiplier of direct personal expense, including benefits, insurance, and hourly wages. And so they are providing you basically with their closest estimate for what each phase of the project will entail for their cost.
Okay, so basically what we're saying here is what they're asking for is basically what they will charge us, correct?
Right. And then basically they're going to invoice as the project goes along. And if we see, for example, in task 1, that they're getting close to that $4,500 and their preliminary design isn't done, then, we'll have the option then to press upon them and get them to tighten it up so that it's not, but it's all done at an hourly rate. So
Okay.
this is just their best estimate of what those hours are going to be. And I think probably with the nature of the scope of the project and the work that they do, they probably have it down to a pretty good range of where they think it's going to come in.
Okay, well, that's good information. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Anybody else for Mrs. Dame?
Mr. Chairman, just one point of clarification, if I could.
Sure.
I know Stacy mentioned that there wasn't a time frame for the project on there, but that will show up in the in the contract documents once we go out for bid. We've laid out the time frame, talked to Bill, and he understands the time frame we want to hit. So once it goes out for bid, there will be a basic start date, and when the contractor signs the contract, there will be a completion date in there that they are expected to be completed by. So that will show up later in the project once it goes out for bid.
Yeah, and again, that's more important to lay out with the contractor. It's just CT has to perform their services at each task as it aligns with that schedule that we're going to set out.
Correct.
Mr.
Any-
Chairman,
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
may I ask a question? I just wanted to make sure I understood what Ms. Dame said. Did you say they're not responsible for overseeing the construction? When you rattled through, I just wanted to make sure that I heard that correct.
So what that means is basically their job is to make sure that the schedule is being met, to make sure the contract documents are being followed, to make sure the specs are being followed, that sort of thing. But they are not, as the construction, say if they're excavating a hole, they're not going to be standing over the hole,
Okay.
making sure that it's being dug down appropriately or that sort of thing. I mean, that is the contractor's responsibility, and that's the only reason that provision is in a contract like that with CT Consultants.
So they're managing the overall project. I see what you mean. I just wanted to make sure because I
Correct.
wanted to make sure I wasn't responsible for something here.
No, and that's standard to have in there so that it defines where everybody's liability would come in should something happen. Because it is, the negligence applies for their percentage of fault, basically, and that's standard.
Chief, they'll do like weekly or bi-weekly job meetings where they meet with the contractors, and it'll be you or the owner's representative, whoever. But yeah, they will manage it. They will process the paperwork, the pay applications, the change order requests, all that. They're managing all that aspect of it.
Yeah, and I think they even have in here somewhere that it says that they'll be there at least once per week.
Yeah.
And if we wanted more, then we can ask for it, but it would be extra, but I think they're going to, be reasonable in their site visits depending on what needs to be done.
I just wanted to clarify just to make sure that I was understanding as well. Thank you.
And they've been pretty good in the past with us. We've dealt with them. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Any other questions or anything from Mrs. Dame? Okay, we move on to committee reports. Any committee reports?
Mr. Chairman, in the next month or two, I think that we will try to work with the unions and see if we can set up, we haven't had a labor management meeting in quite some time. I'm hoping that that's because there hasn't been any labor management problems, but I'm going to try to get with unions and make sure that we have an opportunity to sit down. I can't remember who the two are that are on, but we'll try to get that just so that we're kind of compliant with our own specifications.
Okay. Thank you, Chief. All right, we move into old business for Fire Station 2, the restrooms and that, Resolution 2102. Mrs. Dame, you want to talk on that?
Sure, I'll read the caption for you. It's resolution number 21-02. It's a resolution approving the contract with CT Consultants, Inc. for professional design and engineering services related to the demolition and renovation of Station 2 of the Madison Fire District, located at 1743 Hubbard Road, Madison, Ohio, and authorizing the entering into of said contract and the payments provided therein. And this would reference the contract that I was talking about earlier with the amendment for the professional liability insurance, just to make sure it's in there.
Okay, thank you. Is there a motion for Resolution 21-02?
Chairman, I so moved.
Is there a second?
Second, Adams.
Is any further discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Gontner,
Yes.
Mr. Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Vest,
Yes.
Mr. Wayman. Mr. Wayman,
He's muted. There.
I was muted, sorry. Yes.
thank you. Mr. Adams,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes. Okay. We're moving to the full-time hiring expansion. Chief, you want to,
Well, Mr. Anderson, I will just say that in November, there was a document presented to the fire board that looked at some options on expanding our full-time ranks. I am going to defer to Captain Sopko to discuss officers meeting, officer recommendations.
thank you.
Good evening, all. On Sunday, the 14th, this past Sunday, the officers, captains and lieutenants met at Station 3 to review the hiring process. I don't know if everybody was able to see the document that we presented. An overview of the testing process. The testing process for this hire was a 100-question online test. The officer also looked at attendance, discipline issues, call activity, training involvement. There were 9 candidates, and at the end of the discussion, the first 4 that were picked were fairly easy. It was after that 4th position, it got kind of tricky on where we placed the rest of the group. So I'll entertain any questions that anybody has as far as the process. If you want me to read off the candidates that we selected, I could do that as well.
Why don't we go with first? Anybody have any questions for Mr. Sopko? You're muted.
Yep, I'm sorry. Yeah, Captain Sopko, just the testing process, all 4 of these candidates, I am going to assume finished rather high in the testing. And I'm looking at your letter, the way they're listed in the letter. Is that how they ranked out test-wise, or is that just how you put the name of the letter?
Let me see here. Yes, how they, let me just double check test scores. Actually, the top, so between number 1 and number 4 is a 4-point difference.
Okay. So they all finished fairly high. They all finished pretty close together then.
Correct.
Okay. And this was the test that was developed. It was developed by the Fire Aptitude.
It was Fire and Police Selection Incorporated, and we chose to go with the Fire Aptitude and Character Test was one of the tests that they offered, and that was the one that the officer group decided that we would give all 9 candidates.
Okay. I just wanted, for the record, this wasn't some test that was developed in-house. This was a test that came from outside.
Yes, it was by Fire and Police Selections Incorporated.
Okay. That's my only question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, Mr. Sopko, if you would, you want to name the top 4, please?
The 4 that the lieutenants and captains are recommending are Joe Romisher, Michael Brewer, Corey Baker, and Steven Silvestro.
Okay.
The alternate is Mike Maskell, and the reason that we chose an alternate is just in case during the hiring process something happens, we don't have to go back to the drawing board and pick another person.
Is there any questions from Mr. Sacco before I ask for a motion for hiring of the 4 individuals? Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Vest. Go ahead.
That's okay. Not about that. Now you're talking about hiring 4, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
For full-time, correct?
Yes.
4 full-time,
Okay,
correct.
just making sure that we're on the same page here. Yeah, for clarification, that's all. So, okay, very
Mr.
good.
Chairman,
All right. May I have a motion for the approval?
Mr.
You
Chairman,
have that motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Dame, just for clarity, they still have a pension, a physical. Is there any specific language that needs to be utilized? Because we still have they have to be able to successfully pass the pension physical. I don't know whether we need to have any language in the motion to protect that.
Yeah, I mean, pending basically qualification and clearance of the criteria they need to pass. And I mean, we'll still have to swear them in and
Right.
do all that stuff. So hopefully by then we'll know.
Right. Okay. Is
I
there a
have a
motion?
question? Mr. Chairman, one question for Captain Sopko, please.
Yes, sir.
Of in-house, of those are,
All 9 candidates were from
Were
within the
in-house.
department. Yes,
Just
we're
making
in-house
sure.
from within the department.
just trying to put that out there for everybody to hear, that's all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vest.
Hey, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I just want everyone to know they put a great testing together on this. As you know, and
Yes.
I know, we've been through these types of things over the years, and
Yes.
Ken also know. They've taken a lot into account in this. This wasn't just one category that they looked at, just that personality test or anything like that. I was very impressed by this. I wish we would do that. They looked at 5 different categories or something like that. That's very impressive because I'll tell you, most places do not do that.
Right.
So they look at 1 or 2 things. That's it. I'm very impressed that they looked at all of this. They looked at everything. It's nice to know that our candidate is very small in the
Right.
safety field right now with everybody, police and fire. I'm a big proponent of this, getting the full timers, getting them while we can, getting them while they're there, not waiting, a year or 2 down the road. That's just something, we can't do anymore, unfortunately. And it's just not Madison, it's everywhere. So it just makes it more difficult for places like Madison, which is a little bit smaller. Even in Painesville, who's a lot larger than Madison, I'm telling you, it's like pulling teeth. We're having the most difficult time too. So I just want to applaud those guys. They did a great job putting this together, and kudos to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. And I have to agree with Mr. Adams. It is a tough, and I'm glad you guys went that way. And I want to thank every one of you that were involved in that. Great job. And if you would pass that on, Mr. Sopko, to all the guys, they did an outstanding job.
Will do, sir.
All right. Is there a motion?
You
Mr.
have
Lee
that
made the
motion?
motion to approve the hiring.
I'm sorry?
Mr. Lee made that motion to approve the hiring of the recommended firefighters.
Okay, there was so much garble I couldn't hear it. Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll give you a second, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Mr. Gartner was muted, that's why. Okay. All right. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Vest,
Yes.
Mr. Wayman,
Yes.
Mr. Adams,
Yeah.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Gutner.
Yes.
Call from Stan and OH.
I have no clue whose phone that is, but
Unfortunately, that's mine. I'll mute.
oh, okay. We move on to new business, the Penguin Mechanical Inc., Resolution 21-03. Mrs. Dame?
Yes, this is Resolution 21-03. It's a resolution authorizing the Madison Fire District to enter into a contract with Penguin Mechanical Inc. for semi-annual air conditioning and furnace maintenance services at both Station 2 and Station 3 from January 1st, 2021 to December 31st, 2021, authorizing the chief of the Madison Fire District to enter into that contract and authorizing payments provided herein.
Is there a motion for 21-03?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make that motion.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
I'll second, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Vest,
Yes.
Mr. Wayman,
Yes.
Mr. Adams,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Gontner,
Yes.
Mr. Lee,
Yes.
Thank you. We'll move on to Resolution 2104, State Auditor opt-in. Mrs. Dame, would you like to read please? You're muted, Mrs. Dame.
Sorry, got ahead of myself. Resolution number 21-04. It's a resolution authorizing exercise of the option to have direct electronic mail communication to the Board of Trustees of the Madison Fire District should the fiscal officer not post a bank reconciliation in UAN in approximately 60 days, and directing the fiscal officer to activate this feature in the district's e-services account. This recommendation was made to the board by both the fiscal officer and the Ohio Auditor of State. Both have strongly recommended that the Board of Trustees opt in through their e-services. So that's the purpose of this resolution.
Thank you. Is there a motion for Resolution 21-04?
Mr. Chairman, I so move to adopt Resolution 2104.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
I'll second it, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Pete. Any further discussion?
Just so you know, I don't plan to let this happen at all. I'm looking for the future and from prior experience, from prior histories at the department when it wasn't happening.
Thank you. Any questions or? Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Wayman,
Yes.
Mr. Adams,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Gontner,
Yes.
Mr. Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Vest.
Yes.
Okay, we move on to the chief's report. Chief?
Yay. Whoops. Yay, thank you, sir. I'm just trying to bring it up. I have too many screens here. Give me one moment. So our volume is increased. Again, we're back up to about 250 runs for the month. I see that I saved the document that is incorrect, so I want to let the board know about anniversaries, and it's kind of weird because this month we're celebrating anniversaries for myself. Ironically, at 32 years, and Nyla, I believe, is 12 years. I'm just trying to get to that sheet so that I can read it. So congratulations, Nyla, on 12 years. Other than that,
Congratulations, Chief, on 32.
well, thank you, sir. Other than that, I'm looking for my stinking piece of paper here because I got sidetracked. Other than that, our volume, we're at about 250 runs for the month, which is about average. Our EMS billing, I'm kind of surprised. We had a good month of January. I hope that shows something more to come. We typically average about 40 to 43,000. In January, for some reason, we had 50,864. I'm not going to go through all the numbers in the interest of time. There are a couple things that I want to bring up. Again, I want to thank the officers. Obviously, I kind of excluded myself and Captain Sopko, Meister, Lieutenant Fallhammer, Henry, and Van Kramer kind of took this promotional thing and managed it. I also want to address Lieutenant Fallhammer and Firefighter Brush and Firefighter Baker, who completed our AFG grant. So we did submit for $104,000 to the FEMA AFG grant. And I don't know how many of you guys have played with the government and grants, but it seems like every year you're trying to kick a field goal and the crossbars are always moving. This year, one of the things that we did was we went for communications and we put in for radios. So, you know, hopefully at some point we're going to find what they're wanting to give away and we're going to hit that. I'm hoping we hit that this year with radios. Our contribution for that, if awarded, is about $9,000. So less than 10% for us to get $100,000 in radios. I also want to thank Lieutenant Fallhammer again. He's really getting into the grants. The East End Fire Departments, Concord, Painesville City, Painesville Township, Leroy, Perry, and Madison wrote a joint grant to the Ohio Fire Marshal. Lieutenant Fallhammer completed our portion of that grant, and we were awarded $10,000, and that was a communication grant. So the fact that the Ohio Fire Marshal's given away money for radios is kind of what I think led us to look further at maybe FEMA and communications and continue to look down that radio path. So while $10,000 will only buy us about 3 radios, that's 3 radios that we don't have to buy. So we should be getting an award letter here shortly, and then we can move ahead and spend that government money. Other than that, I think the guys here, just so that everybody knows, in January we had over $10,000 in overtime. Staffing is a huge problem. One of the things that we talked about as officers was we're really going to try to look at revamping the staffing model. One of the things that we always push for is the volume of people, having guys on duty. One of the problems we have now with the decreased number of part-time staff is one day we'll have 8 people, which is our maximum, and the next day we'll have 5. And just to give you an example, last Thursday we had 8 people on. On Friday we had 5 people on, and 3 of them were on overtime. And so the board understands one of the things that we look at is the tough part, as I said in the email, is we've modified our standards to try to recruit. And the challenge with modifying standards is that everybody is not plug and play. I can't take person A and substitute them for person D because they don't all share the credentials that are needed. So, ideally we're looking for people that have the entire list of credentials. That is a unicorn. It doesn't exist. So we're going to do what we can here, and actually my goal is March 21st, I hope to have these folks ready to go with their physicals. Hopefully next month we can have a swearing in, and then hopefully March 21st we begin to make some adjustments, and we're going to decrease the total volume, not having 8 people on, because it's really much more important for us to get consistency, and I think that's really what we're striving for, is consistency. We talked about the overtime. $10,000 or $11,000 a month is not sustainable in overtime. Unfortunately, right now we're out of options, and I thank the guys who have stepped up and done overtime and picked up overtime. But not only is it not sustainable from the budget standpoint, it's also not sustainable for these guys. Having guys working 36 and 48-hour shifts with 24 hours off and coming back. We're talking about the building, and we looked at some of our liability risk with the building. I think we need to look at liability risk with staff. They're the most important people. So hopefully this move and some of the things that we've talked about from a strategic standpoint in the officers' meetings, hopefully that's going to put us in a better position where we're not, not only are we not busting the budget, but busting the mental and emotional capabilities of the guys that are working here. Other than that, I'd be happy. The report was there. I'll be honest with you, this has been a long week. I'd be happy to field questions from the board, but I don't want to regurgitate that information unless you'd like me to.
Anybody have any questions for the chief? Okay.
And again, I want to thank, these guys really have stepped up to keep this staffing, and I want to thank them.
Mr. Adams, you had a good point a little bit ago before we were on about the driveway. You want to?
Yeah, I was asking the chief about the entrance there to the driveway. I mean, we've been talking about this for some time. I think it's very unique that it's just that end of the driveway. I did not know that was the last area that was poured. And if you look at that driveway, you can see there's a difference in the color and everything in the concrete.
Yep.
So my question to the chief was more or less, did we ever have Sidleys, or can we have Sidleys? At least come out and take a look at it. I know the warranty and all that is passed, but maybe they can even look at that, because that's just, totally nonsense the way it looks from that part, and it's all from them. The concrete is all from them. And I understand with the salt and everything like that, especially coming down 528, it sits there, but that really tore it up. So maybe if we could get some kind of consultation from them on why it's so bad, maybe we could figure out what to do in the future with it. But we're going to have to do something with that driveway, like ASAP.
Right.
Thank you.
Hey, Chief, like you said there, I know in the back they had problems with the sidewalk. They come out and replaced it for free. Maybe if you have come out and maybe have them take a look at it and say, hey,
I'll be happy to reach out to Sidley's rep and see what the remedy is. I have a feeling, because I used to do this for a living, I have a feeling at this point and the age of the concrete what the response, but I certainly think it's worth looking at. I am also going to look at some local contractors again and see if we can't get an idea. I totally forgot that we had discussed this prior. I do want to get some folks to come in, take a look at it, give us an estimate. That's a big hunk of concrete. Again, as with everything we do, it poses challenges, because do we have them do half so that we can maintain a driveway, and then when they're done with the first half, we shift to the other side and do the second half? I've already talked to Melvin Safford, who is with ODOT. He's the one that handles their permits. I know because of the intersection that can be a challenge to get a permit, but when I talked to Mr. Safford, being a fire department and understanding it's temporary in nature, he didn't seem to think that getting a temporary permit for a cut in there would be a problem. So I reached out to 3 people last year, got nobody to give me any kind of quote. So I will reach out again, because I agree, Mr. Adams, every day that I pull in here, my teeth get shorter and shorter.
Well, maybe also, Pete, you know that kind of stuff. Maybe you could take a look at it, and you and Todd, from experience, both of you, see what maybe you can come up with or something. Pete, what do you think?
Yeah, Max, I'd be glad to. But I think what Mr. Adams said, maybe it would be a good idea to try to encourage someone from Sidley's to come down and take a look at it first and say, why is it like this here and like that there, and see what they say and say, boy, we're kind of disappointed. We paid a lot of money. We paid the same money for every yard of concrete. So why is this so different? I would use that angle first, but I'll go up and look at it this week, in fact, even.
Yeah. What about if they would bring somebody out, Pete, and all this, you can listen and maybe hear what he has to say, and you can put your word in. It's up to you. I'm not putting you on the spot, but I'm looking out because that kind of stuff, and so does Baker. That way you guys can know what you're talking about and get this, see what they say. That's all we can do.
I would be very receptive to that.
Thank you, Pete and Mr. Baker. Okay, we move on to the closing.
Wait, 1 minute, Max. 1 minute.
Yes, I'm sorry, Mr. Best. Go ahead.
I just had one question, and it had to do with the billing on the inspections and how the progress is going with that, in collections and otherwise.
I can tell you that we still have some familiar names that I believe are on the list. I think that the revenue's still coming in, and to be honest with you, Captain Sopko, have you looked at that in the last week or so, that you can add anything?
Yes, inspection revenue is steady. It seems to be our problems are with past inspections from last year, and we're going through the process that Mrs. Dame set forward, and there'll be some other notices going out here in the near future.
Okay, so this process has been in place with the new employee for approximately, what are we looking at, about 18 months now?
Correct.
Okay. Are we tracking what we're taking in, what our costs are, and where we're at with this thing?
Yes, we are. However, we just recently changed our billing format, so it's a little bit harder to get real numbers because of the formulas on the sheets that we use.
Right.
And Todd's more into the whole Excel spreadsheet, so he can probably explain it better. I can't automatically go to the sheet and figure a sum. I used to break it down month by month, but now we do a format where it does it on a year. And the form was set up so it automatically tabulates, automatically fills, making it a lot easier for Nyla that creates the invoices.
Right.
So that was more important for us to kind of streamline it. So when we generate the invoices, it's a smoother process.
Mr. Vest, to answer your question,
By
though.
doing that, it makes it harder to do a monthly summary on, what was billed and what was the income that came in.
Okay.
To give you a little better, I think we're probably running behind about $5,000 a year.
Okay, that was my, because when we implemented this, we were looking for a zero impact on the budget. So I'm looking to try and keep that as we promised.
I think we're running behind. I think part of it is outstanding invoices. I think part of it is, to be honest with you, I think part of it is we made a decision to soften up on folks because, if we went out and charged them $50 for an inspection and they had something that didn't meet the expectations, we went out again. And when we went out again, we were going to charge them $25 for a reinspection because, again, it takes time. And because of a lot of pushback from, we may show up and they have fixed everything that we had told them that they needed to fix. And to try to make this as, you mentioned the other day calling before we go out and visit. Well, people are upset that, we came out, we told them you needed to fix A, B, and C. We come out again, A, B, and C is fixed. They've done their part, billing them another $25 because we came out again, seemed to be tumultuous. So I think the way we've tried to modify this a little bit to make this a little more palatable publicly probably has hurt that revenue a little bit as well.
Well, that's okay, but what I'm looking at, I have no problem with that. I'm just looking to see at the end of a year or two where we're at, whether or not we need to, if we need to modify the procedures that we go forward with by not charging for that second visit to make sure that they've done their, as long as they're compliant.
Right.
Okay. All right. If they're not compliant, I have no problem with the charge. But if they're compliant, I can see waiving the charge and maybe using that as an incentive for them to go forward and do it the right way. And that's great. If we need to modify this is a work in progress, and that's fine.
And that's what we've done.
I'd like to see, just be able to see at the end of a year where we at with this thing. How we doing? Are we at a loss? Like you said, are we at $5,000 loss? And then what percentage of what we're taking in is that? I'm just looking at it from a business perspective, as I was when the suggestion came forward.
And I will
Mr.
say,
Vest, I'll have those numbers for the board next month's meeting. Since the inception of the billing for inspections, I'll have all that printed out and updated current.
Okay.
And
Thank you,
again,
Captain.
And that's kind of what we did was, I think, making it palatable. I know Captain Sopko and I talked before about you go back there and they fixed everything, and hitting them with a $25 bill with as much pushback as we've gotten from some of the community. It's trying to make it work and not necessarily make it a revenue stream, but trying to cover our cost. And I think now's the time to look at it, like you said, and see whether we're, the nice part is I'm guessing that Jim has done, I know he's done all the businesses at least once and is on round 2. So we've made a difference because we've been in these places and we've made them safer. So that's a good thing, but we'll look a little bit closer and have that for you.
Okay, thanks, Chief.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions for the chief?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I could, on same subject. Chief, just wondering, and I meant to ask you this the other day when we talked, we had received a letter at the township offices from Mr. Montgomery asking a number of questions about the inspection. And you wrote him a really nice letter back explaining in detail why we're doing what we're doing. I was just wondering if you ever responded back to after you sent him that letter.
He didn't respond to the letter. He did call the station, and I answered the phone because he had a question about something else, and we did have a discussion. He thanked me for my reply. I don't think that, I think that he was thankful for the reply. I'm not necessarily sure that my reply made him feel better about the process. But we had some good dialogue. I explained the position of the department. I explained the position as the fire chief and my responsibility. He understood. I think he's just a gentleman that pays a lot of money in taxes and isn't interested in fees that he doesn't have an opportunity to see on the ballot, or, you know, and he's entitled to that. And I thanked him for his opinion. But yeah, the follow-up was good. He was satisfied. He's, not going to be happy next year when he gets another one for his annual, probably, but that's his right. That's his right, and he can vote, and I think he at least understood our perspective.
Okay. That's all I was wondering, if you'd ever heard back from him, because you did a nice job with that letter, and it's a good one to keep on file if you get that question again, because it really explains the process. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you for that, Chief. Any other questions for the Chief? Okay, we'll move on to the closing public portion. Chief, we have anybody?
Mr. Chairman, we have no questions from the public.
Thank you, sir.
Chief, if you don't, I'd like to add a little something in there in the public portion. Lieutenant Fallheimer.
Oh,
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Right. So really quick, I just want to first thank the fire board for helping to basically make the safety of the firefighters' future better at the Madison Fire District. Secondly, I'd like to also thank Captain Soptico for presenting the officers' recommendations. And lastly, I'd like to thank Chief Baker for helping secure the future of Madison Fire and making the safety of the community and the firefighter safety better with adding some additional full-time. So, in that token, I think the fire board made a tough decision tonight, but, in all reality, I think with what's coming up here in the future with some future, hopefully first-time retirees from Madison Fire, it's going to be a lot better and help our transition into a, I see Chief Baker has his fingers crossed right there. We have yet to have a full-timer retire from us yet. So, I just want to thank everybody for all that we've done and help secure the future of Madison and kind of move us forward and become a progressive department here. So thank you, everybody, so much.
Thank you, Mr. Fallheimer, and everyone involved in that. I do appreciate it for the future of the community and the fire department and everyone's safety. Thank you. Okay, closing board comments. Anybody have any closing board comments?
Mr. Chairman, just one quick comment to kind of follow up to what the Lieutenant Fallheimer said. It was a difficult decision. We're growing this department, but as I said to you a few days ago, and Mr. Wayman, if we can't provide the public with services when it comes to EMS or fire, then we might as well lock the doors. So yeah, it was a tough financial decision, but it's absolutely one we had to make, and it was for the betterment and the growth of the department, and it really, in my opinion, was really a no-brainer in the end. We had to do it.
Yep. And I think everybody did well on that and thought hard on it, and I think we're all thinking for the future in our fire department and the future of the fire department, and want to thank everybody involved in that. Okay, no other closing board comments? All right, our next fire board meeting will be March 17th, 2021 at 7 p.m. And then April 21st, 2021 at 7 p.m. If there's no further business, can I have a motion to adjourn?
You have that motion, Mr. Chairman?
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
Second.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Adams,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Gontner,
Yes.
Mr. Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Vest,
Yes.
Mr. Wayman.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, everyone. The time is 7:49. And everybody have a great evening and be safe out there. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
everyone. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.